On the Threshold Looking In. Thoughts on how Bakhtin's concept of answerability, otherness and dialogue and Rogroth's concept of potentiality can be useful in theory teaching within art practice. By Gabriele Esser, art theory and history teacher at Waikato Institute of Technology in the School of Media Arts in Hamilton, New Zealand. My area of teaching appears on the syllabus as contextual and critical studies. Under this umbrella, a lot of things can be addressed. In the past, it used to be traditional art history. The idea was to introduce students of art practice to the excellence of past art making and inspire them to learn from their ancestors, to realize how their own production could only be achieved because they themselves are placed on the shoulder of giants. This was the time of what I will describe as the funnel paradigm. Educators were certain in their knowledge and provided canonical information based on careful research done by peers. This was the equivalent of drawing plaster cast statues in practice teaching. The break with tradition in art changed the education paradigm, which addressed aspects of aesthetics and the philosophy of art, as well as critical theory and media studies. These areas of investigation were connected to postmodern art making and of use for students who wanted to engage with and play a role in the current art world. Tongue-in-cheek, I suggest to call this the Pali paradigm because educators, well aware of the difference in engagement with visual culture products, attempted to familiarize themselves with and enter into students' visual spaces in order to experience the visual culture that surrounds them in a first-hand way. They forgot, however, that they achieved this experience through a process of intellectual engagement, not by experiential osmosis. In my view, this paradigm, though well intended, is not wholly successful because in essence it was still based on the magisterial mode of teaching. There is no authentic dialogue because the teacher is still the one in the know. For theory teaching in the context of art practice to remain relevant, it is vital, in my view, to think about a new paradigm which acknowledges the fact that most educators still come from a different generation. Even young teachers who grew up in the digital revolution space, born in the late 70s and now in their 30s, may not be fully experienced the appearance of digital technology when they were still children. The majority of teachers are older than 30 though, and for them all digital technologies and contemporary visual culture products, though enjoyed and appreciated, were not part and parcel of their visual upbringing. I think one can compare this to the pre-50s generation who did not grow up with television but consumed it as adults as a matter of course. There is a fine difference in our consuming of media products, whether or not they were around from the first time we became aware of the world around us. Experiential osmosis, embodied understanding, as a result of gradual, often unconscious absorption of knowledge or ideas through continual exposure rather than deliberate learning based on epistemological information acquisition. Alienation is a key word here. To avoid alienation, we have to accept that we are dealing with a clash of cultures. I quote, "All cultures and the text generated by these cultures are multiple, hybrid, heteroglossic, unevenly developed, characterized by multiple historical trajectories, rhythms and temporalities," unquote. In order to address the unparalleled changes in visual culture and technology surrounding the image, we need to rethink our mode of delivery. I suggest the threshold paradigm. Why threshold? The threshold position allows the teacher to move beyond what is given. That means he or she can reflect on the merit and relevance of their own knowledge. The main thing that the educators have to ask themselves today: who am I? What makes me who I am? What do I know? How do I know? How is this knowledge of importance to the art making of my students? What can I learn from the students? How can what I have learned be of importance for my teaching practice? In short, how do I achieve a balance between what I think it's worth preserving of the canonical knowledge I acquired through the years of frequently burning the midnight oil and the new? How brave is it to admit that I often find it difficult to comprehend the glut of visual culture products in various new media? How do I enter into a participatory act of viewing and accept the entropic nature of my teaching endeavor? The metaphorical threshold space also allows for a movement towards what has not yet been. Moving towards, meaning moving in the direction of something conceived, however dimly, something that has value for those who strive and struggle. This is also the space in which teacher and student can meet in the new paradigm, because the uncertainty and speed of contemporary visual culture production leaves both sides breathless and perplexed. On the one hand, the teacher adopts a threshold stance in connection to those visual culture products that the students are familiar with through a process of what I earlier called experiential osmosis. On the other hand, both teacher and student remain on the threshold when it comes to engaging with and understanding and making meaning of new visual culture products. This ensures a beneficial consensus between two parties and opens up a rewarding dialogue. Postmodern thinking has taught us that there is no specific answer to any of those questions, and all I intend to do in this paper is suggest a few tentative steps towards applying the threshold paradigm to our 21st century theory in art practice teaching. Drawing mainly on Bakhtin's notion of dialogue, heteroglossia, and commonality on the margins, and Rogoff's concept of potentiality and criticality, I intend to put forward a model for teaching theory in art practice applying the threshold paradigm. The core goal in all the teaching paradigms mentioned was to make sense of the pictures confronted with, to engage with them and fill them with meaning that has relevance for our day-to-day life and art. To reach this goal, we can employ a number of different ways. Sheer art appreciation and wondering at the skill of application of paint, visual storytelling, achieving color harmony, all these things have their merit and lead us to some kind of understanding of the meaning of this product. In the funnel paradigm, this aspect was largely stressed, to the exclusion of other meaning-making devices. The Pali paradigm concentrated on the critical theory interpretation and attempted to anchor the image in the context of the socio-political production of art, thereby often losing the image itself. The chance we have in the threshold paradigm is to regain art appreciation and wonderment at the sheer physical production of art in connection with an awareness of how and when and by whom they were produced, as well as a reflection on audience reception. Within this context, understanding and response can merge and mutually condition each other. The idea of the threshold came to me when I looked at the Las Meninas interpretation